Abhigya Anand, welcome on my channel. Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Krishna.
I'm really excited for this interview because you actually turned viral during the pandemic, and ever since I have followed a lot of your videos. And today I want to specifically ask you about Prashna Kundali and Prashna Shastra. Now, a lot of astrologers, when they do, your horoscope, when they're reading a horoscope, they don't generally parallelly open a Prashna Kundali, which actually they're supposed to. Because when they do it, they are, even before you can ask them a question, they can tell, what you're going to ask for. And a lot of astrologers probably don't know how to go about it. Since you have been literally learning Prashna Kundali and Prashna Shastra since such long time, can you tell me since what age are you learning Prashna Shastra?
So I started off the journey in astrology quite around age 9 or 10, actually. Prior to which I thought astrology was just some kind of a newspaper stuff that comes on your Sunday newspaper when I was a child. Prashna came in my first year of learning astrology. They were not teaching it to me in the place where I was learning in a college of astrology. I happened to stumble upon a book called the Prashna Marga. And that is a very exquisite and wonderful book that covers the subject of Prashna in such deep detail. And it was very intriguing. I began to research it and began to apply it as well. At that time, I used to, discuss with some of my friends and some of our family members and everything. And I found it to be very much powerful and accurate. I was able to identify, as you rightly mentioned, the purpose of a person's visit prior to them asking any questions. And also, till date, be it mundane astrology or be it analyzing somebody's personal horoscope, I found Prashna to be, very, very powerful in terms of giving the accurate picture of what's going to happen. Generally, apart from just researching specific planetary positions and doing a scientific analysis of what is going to happen, I do every time try to get a confirmation from the Prashna as well, even when I'm making predictions about the world.
So for the layman there who has no clue about what we're talking about and who doesn't understand the astrological terms and the lingo, would you be able to share an example or like a very astonishing maybe prediction that happened by you through Prashna?
Yes, so I just mentioned a couple of them. There are a lot of them which have happened in the past as well. So I use Prashna day to day. Almost every day I use it. And as you mentioned, yes, whenever I open a Jataka of a specific individual, I also open a Prashna Kundali exactly when they ask the question, that second, that minute. And that's helped me a lot till date. So starting with an example of predicting COVID-19, say, initially, and then we can also go to some personal predictions that were made. When I was predicting, when I was actually coming, waking up to the reality that something very dangerous is going to happen. At that time, I was basically in the terrace. I was chanting my mantras early in the morning. I was in Arunachala Kshetra, Tiruvannamalai, and I was facing the eastern direction and I was chanting my Navagraha mantras and going around like that. I chant for the 8 Dikpalakas, 8 directions, as well as each of the Navagrahas for each direction. And then I turned north where the Arunachala hill was in front of me. And that's when it just struck me that several grahas were basically, I had some kind of a time lapse in my mind at that time. The grahas were basically, going like a time lapse in my head. Actually, basically able to visualize that some grahas are connecting in a specific form, and there's a pattern that's coming up. So initially, it was not some kind of a data science-based prediction in which I was looking at the history and just directly correlating it to the positions. That was step 2. Prashna came in between these 2 steps. Step 1 was when I was basically meditating and chanting mantras, when I realized something was going on. And step 2 is where the Prashna came into picture. I also instantaneously, I had the question in mind. So the moment you get a question, that very form of question itself takes birth as Prashna. And that question, that moment when that question has risen in your mind is very significant, because it is your desire to know the future that has propelled you to ask the question, and that question becomes an entity of its own, and that entity has its own date, time, and place of birth. So you cast a horoscope based on that specific entity, and I suddenly realized that it was happening, and the Prashna confirmed that there was some major danger coming up. Then I saw which is the appropriate time frame when it is coming up. Now, when you are trying to understand which time frame it is, you should look at the speed of each graha, relative speed. And yes, the relative speed also confirmed it was within about 9 months to 10 months approximately. So then I was, yes, now I should do some deep research on this, because I can't just go out and tell people just based on, because of course, I'm not a rishi. I'm just an ordinary mortal just trying to understand some things. So I cannot just directly go and tell the people like, this is what is going to happen. I was meditating and I found it out. So then I did my research, proper research based on data science, analyzing the history of the past and seeing positions and correlating them, and finally figured out it would happen. So Prashna played an important role here, and that was astonishing to me. Similarly, Prashna played an important role when I was about to predict the Russia-Ukraine war. Prashna played an important role. I can explain the combinations as well, but for most of the people, it's as simple as understanding the point when the question was made in my mind. I cast a chart for that. And even the Israel-Hamas situation, I tried to confirm it with a Prashna. Coming to an example on the personal horoscope side, this was very much astonishing for me. And this gave me that firm belief in Prashna initially. Many years back, I was basically approached by a family who unfortunately had one of their family members absconding regularly from the house and just going away for a long period of time and not returning. But this time it was too long. Like it was about 2 months and he hadn't appeared yet. And it was becoming very, very much tense for them. And they basically, tried to contact us. We were just living a road away. And they were also not, very much well off. They could not afford search operations and getting the police to find that person and all of that. And they were getting very by the moment. So they actually were wanting to understand what the situation is and where he is. So basically, I first took the horoscopes, and the horoscopes I found, yes, he's basically something is wrong with his mental state. That was very clear from the horoscope. But now when he's going to come back is very difficult to say just from the horoscope. That's when I opened the Prashna, and I was about 14 years old then. I had just stepped into the world of Prashna. I'm quoting this incident because this is what solidified my interest in it. And I had literally a bag of books with me, all the Prashna Shastra books and Brihat Shastra and Jainese books and everything. And I was opening them one by one. I made them sit in front of me for an hour approximately because I was very new to the field of Prashna. And then I kept on surfing through pages and trying to figure out the right positions. I used Neelakantha's method as well. And finally, based on the relative speeds of grahas, I was able to arrive at the exact day when he would come back. I said it was 14th of July, 2019. He's going to be back at home. And I was like, when I was pronouncing that, I was not totally aware that I'm pronouncing it. There was less of a, there was not much of a logical mind asking me inside, oh, wait a moment, are you right? Maybe you're not. Nothing of that sort. I got to the calculation and I literally just told it to them on the spot. That's also very important. It's not that you should have a part of your mind always telling you no, don't say this. So that is a very important aspect as well. If you get the intuition and you feel you're right, just say it. That's very important. And then I just said 14th of July 2019 is going to be coming. But after I said that, I just realized that I just said a very precise day. I didn't even give it within a week. I just said the day, and then I realized. But I said, okay, it's fine. Let's just go ahead. And the previous day, like 13th of July, he had not yet arrived. And I was like, I'm not sure. And the next day morning, the family members were still searching for him. And 9:30 a.m., he arrived back home after 3 or 4 months of a long hiatus away from home. And, he came back home and they were like literally shocked. So even I was shocked for a moment, like, first of all, there was a question as to whether he was alive or not. That question I replied as yes, he was alive. Then where he is, I told the direction where he was, told he was somewhere within the city, in a place where he cannot be, tracked so easily. And he's, close to some kind of water body. And yeah, that was also true. And then the date also, that was true. And then he came back home and he quit alcohol and everything, all of his bad habits, because he heard about this Prashna. I think that's where Jyotish Shastra makes a difference. We can use it to change people's lives, basically. Once you have belief in the Vedic systems, of which astrology is an important component, from that point of time, it can be a life-changing experience for you. That is the best part of Jyotish Shastra. Using the predictions of COVID-19 and other major predictions, I have tried my best to turn people towards a sattvic way of living. Because if you want people to turn towards a sattvic and a Vedic way of living, they need to see the power of the Vedas. Some people are very much open. They don't need miracles in order to understand things. Some others need a push from to prove that the Vedic systems are very much in vogue even at the present. So we can change people's lives with Jyotish Shastra, and this was one of the examples I had personally encountered. And there are lots more with different kinds of people. Like, for example, in some omens also play a role. I was able to identify somebody's accident just a few days back by an omen that was coming up. And also I was able to identify a past accident within the last 2 or 3 months, before the Prashna. So even the past can be seen with the Prashna as well as the future, and sometimes very accurate. You can even predict what happened yesterday, day before, if you're really good at entering that presence, that presence of your mind in the moment, bringing yourself in the moment.
Wow. This, I think the date that you predicted, 14th July, it's really astonishing. I've never heard something like this before. And I would say that there is some divine grace that's flowing, into you through some source out there, because it's only your sadhana here I can see that is, fructifying alongside your astrology. Also, I want to ask you this question, which I have always wondered about, Prashna. Say you ask a question and an astrologer, makes the Prashna Kundali for you and gives, say, his verdict about something, and you are still not convinced about it, or you still want to say go ahead with a plan that you are convinced with, and maybe the astrologer says that I don't think you should be doing this. Is it valid to take another opinion and do another Prashna Kundali, maybe through the same astrologer or through another astrologer? And if yes, then what should be the time span between two Prashnas?
That's a very good question. But generally what happens is that the Prashna and the Jataka of an individual go hand in hand. So generally, you will not get a diametrically opposite result to what has already been predicted with the help of one Prashna, because it is related to the horoscope as well. Sometimes, one thing that's very special is that apart from predictions, the Prashna Kundali directly corresponds to a person's birth Jataka, the birth horoscope. And this happened to me multiple times. Till date, I've used Prashna about 1,500 times approximately. And almost 80% to 90% of the time, there is a stark correlation to the time when a particular individual asks a question, when the querist asks a question and when he was born. And I've found this repeating so many times that you could author a separate paper on this subject itself, the very correlation between the two. So it's very difficult. It's very rare when the Prashna, say, disagrees with the horoscope with something. I've personally never experienced something like that, where the Prashna disagrees with your horoscope. So when the Prashna and the horoscope go well together, I don't think a subsequent Prashna will tell you that this was wrong. If a subsequent Prashna is somehow indicating something different from the initial Prashna, it should be about something else. It should not be about this question, because this question is already asked and the prediction for it is already given. So I think that is where, it actually makes a lot of sense.
So you're saying that once a Prashna is answered, it doesn't make sense to answer it again through somebody else?
Yes, it doesn't make much sense to answer it because it already correlates with your horoscope. In case it was not correlating with your horoscope, the same file, like for example, in your Prashna, you are able to identify that you are going to get healthy soon. And your horoscope says that you'll also be getting healthy soon. And both of them basically are on the same page. Then it's locked right there. And you can say that you will get healthy soon with a lot of confidence. But in case you say, do another Prashna, and that says you're not going to be healthy, I don't think, first of all, that this incident will even happen, in which case that there'll be a prediction that you will not be healthy. There will be no diametrically opposite results between two Prashnas. That is also very clear.
Okay, nice. Very, very interesting subject here. And I think for those who don't know, if you don't know your date of birth, time of birth, place of birth, accurately, I think a Prashna Kundali can always come to your aid. Am I right, Abhigya?
Exactly. There is an entire branch of Jyotish Shastra dedicated to this known as Nashta Jataka. And with this, and with a lot of effort, you can erect an entire chart just using the time when a particular question is asked. It is very much possible. Using Jupiter's movements, you can analyze the year of birth. Using the sun's movements, which is an ayana, you can understand the ayana of birth, which is Uttarayana or Dakshinayana. During with Mercury's, you can understand the ritu or the season of birth. During with moons, you can know the paksha. With Mars, you can know the masa. That is the month. Paksha is the fortnight. And with the lagna of the Prashna Kundali, you can identify the lagna. With the nakshatra that is rising, you can identify the nakshatra or a trine from there. The lagna, again, a trine from there is possible. The moon sign, again, a trine from there is possible. That a trine corresponds to approximately 150 degrees from there. The lagna is positive. So it's very much possible to narrow it down, but it's very, very difficult. And seldom can one do it without the aid of proper intuition and proper sadhana. It's extremely difficult.
So, for those who want to know how to learn Prashna Shastra and which are the schools here, like in India, and the teachers who teach Prashna Shastra, can you just guide them, like according to you, which is the best school to learn Prashna from?
When I was learning Jyotish Shastra, I learned only the predictive parts from the Jataka section, actually speaking. Prashna is a part of the Jataka section, and anyone who wants to learn Prashna Shastra must also have a deep knowledge of the Jataka system as propounded by Parashara Maharshi, as well as other Maharshis, as well as Varaha Mihira's works. Without this, trying to understand Prashna Shastra is going to be very difficult, and understanding this will make the whole thing more broadened, and one's understanding will be deepened if we go deeply into the karakattvas of each grahas, rashis, and bhavas, and other important parameters in the zodiac. So for Prashna Shastra, the very first thing that we're supposed to pay attention to is understanding the Jataka system itself. And secondly, we can start getting into Prashna. After that, it's actually just a matter of expanding the theories and the principles of Jataka into the Prashna system, as well as adding a few more special rules here and there. So the best way to learn Prashna is to start with Jataka. You can go to any place where they teach you in a very traditional way. And for Prashna, the most important thing isn't just the technique. The most important thing is your presence. How present you are when a question is being put to you. So when a question is being put to you as an astrologer, how present are you in that specific moment? Present in the sense your mind, your body, and your entire being should be right there and should be able to feel the pulsation, what is happening in your surrounding. You should be very much aware and alert of what is happening around you. Both the shakunas, that is omens, also play a role, and I've seen that in my experience as well. And the planetary positions also play a role. So, and exactly what you happen to see in those planetary positions, that plays a role. What time the question is being put, what is the condition of the person who is putting the questions. There's so many things. And I believe intuition has a major role to play in terms of Prashna. Because when you look at a massive combination of so many combinations, so many permutations, positions, aspects, and conjunctions, understanding which one to pick of those 1,000 different positions is a very tricky job. And that's where intuition comes into picture. If analysis was 100% astrology, it's very difficult. In Prashna, I believe intuition and analysis go very much closely knit together. And it's very important to focus on the intuition, develop that, practice sadhanas, especially sadhanas of your favorite deity, Ishta Devatas, sadhanas for Surya, Surya Bhagavan and Surya Narayana. So all those things are very important, equally important as just studying the scriptures and studying very analytical methods of it.
I totally agree with you on that. Also, if you're comfortable sharing any particular books on Prashna that people can study, students of astrology can study, maybe it will help them.
Yes, the Prashna Marga is the best. It is actually one of the best texts that is available. It was written by Nambudiri Brahmin, in the 16th century in Kerala. It is a combination. It is actually a synthesis of all the great Prashna texts and all the philosophies and everything that's been propounded over the last many millennia by our ancient sages of Jyotish Shastra. It is actually a compendium of everything in one book, and that's what makes it very special. It's spread over nearly more than 1,000 verses, and it comes in 2 volumes actually. And it is very helpful to go through the entire text and especially read the Sanskrit part of it, because the Sanskrit part can actually help you unravel more meanings from it than say just reading the literal translation. Similarly with Prashana Shastra and every other scripture, the literal translations are very different sometimes from what is being said in the text, and I've seen many discrepancies in major translations. So it's helpful to learn Sanskrit, because not only is it sometimes the fault of a translator, sometimes it is just that English cannot convey the meanings in those texts. So for anyone who's looking at knowledge from the scriptures, the best way to understand it is to learn Sanskrit as well together, along with learning Jyotish Shastra, and read the Sanskrit text as well and memorize it if possible. So the Prashna Marga is very good. The Prashna Tantra is very good by Nilakantha. And there are many more wonderful texts available on Prashna, but the ancient ones are by far the best. When you're looking at any modern text, of course, it's good to read that as well, but that is more from an experience point of view, and it is not exactly equivalent to an ancient text.
So is Prashna Kundali even more accurate than the normal, Kundali that you get from your birth details, and you see the Lagna, that's the Lagna chart? Is it more accurate than that?
So the Prashna Kundali is actually it is actually a 3-dimensional form of the karmic pattern of a person's life, and it focuses more on immediacy. In my experience, and also based on the Prashna Marga, it focuses on immediacy more specifically. The immediate past, the immediate present, and the immediate future is more shown by the Prashna than say by the Jataka. So the Jataka and the Prashna are each very accurate in their own ways. And the Prashna can also tell you about things very, very, very much in the past, but it more specializes in immediacy. Like, for example, if somebody comes to you, say, and asks you a question at a specific time, when the grahas are in a specific pattern, a specific combination in the skies, it can tell you a lot about that person's immediate past, the immediate present, exactly what is happening to them at the present moment, and their future. The horoscope can also do this, but it takes a little bit more digging into the deep, antardashas, pratyantardashas, sukshma dasas, and even the pranadashas to figure that out, whereas the Prashna can do that in a jiffy. So which is why we rely on the Prashna much more than say the Jataka when talking about immediate situations.
Thank you, Abhigya, for your astrological analysis and whatever you shared with our audience today about Prashna Kundali and so many of your predictions that came true. Very astonishing, very inspiring. I wish you all the very best for your researches and your vidya and sadhana. Thank you for joining me today.
I really, really like your work as well. It is very much needed at the present time, bringing out the treasures in Sanatana Dharma from different disciplines. I also watched many of your videos. And it really brings out the true treasures that we have. Like, for example, the interview that you had with Anuradha Porwalji, that was just awesome. Wherein, you bring experiences from different, disciplines in Sanatana Dharma, in Vedic Dharma together. Jyotish Shastra is one of them. And thank you so much for doing this work too. Jai Shri Krishna.